Hello everyone. In the previous classes, we have discussed a lot about exceptions. We know what is an exception, why it occurs, how many ways the exception can occur, a little bit about them. Now we discuss in a bit more detail about exceptions. We have already been exposed to try, catch, and finally. In the try block, whatever we write, even in case of an exception, it is caught by the catch block. And the catch block can be more than one, where we can catch more than one exceptions. And whatever is written in finally is always executed no matter what. We can also use throw and throws keyword. The throw keyword is primarily used where we want to tell that this particular piece of code throw an exception, and this particular piece of code will throw an exception. So in order to throw an exception, we generally use a keyword throw. For example, we specifically want to throw a particular exception, so that way we use the keyword throw. And if there is a method, or if there is any particular block which we know that can throw a particular exception, so that time, in order to flag a warning, we generally use a keyword throws, that this particular method can throw an exception. So that time we use the keyword throws. So any other object or any other method that wants to use the previous method which can throw an exception, so the newer method that will know that the called method can throw an exception because of the fact that it has already flagged a warning using throws keyword. Let us see some examples. So throw keyword is used to throw an exception explicitly. Where we want to throw an exception, we use the keyword throw this particular exception. And let us see this example in which we throw a particular exception. So we want to call a method validate, in which we are asking for an age. If the age is less than 18, we specifically throw an exception. So throw, and we call it an arithmetic exception, and we create an object of it and throw that exception. That is how we specifically throw an exception. That generally is the case. We can also use the keyword throws where we want to explicitly tell the calling method that there is an exception that can be thrown by this method. And if and I have not handled it, so it is your responsibility to handle that particular exception. For example, in this particular case, we have seen that in the previous example as well, although the method p is calling n, but n specifically throws that I can throw an IO exception, and then it calls m, where m also can say that I can throw an IO exception. Now it is the responsibility of the calling method, that is n, which is calling m, to either handle that exception or specifically say that I can also throw this exception. So n is calling m, where m clearly says that I can throw this exception. So n also says that I can throw this exception. So if the method p wants to use this method n, so it has to either handle it or specifically say. So in this particular case, p decides to handle this exception, and in this gracious manner, it handles it properly. So that's the beauty of this keyword throws, that the calling method knows that the exception can be thrown, and it is a responsibility of them to handle it properly. And there are certain differences where the throw explicitly throws keyword just declares that there can be a possibility of an exception, and I have not caught this exception. This throws keyword tells that the method has not caught it. It is your responsibility to catch it. There are various ways in which user can also create a user defined exception, where I create a new class, let's say ABC exception, where I extend the exception class. So now with this newer class defined, which is extending exception, works as well as any other subclass of an exception, either runtime exception, or either array index out of bound exception, or null pointer exception, or arithmetic exception. Just like any other exception, my newly created exception, which is an extension of exception, works properly as well. We can also use the methods like get message, toString, and to create to push the stack as well. We can all use that to properly display the message in the called in the exception that is there. We can also throw that newer class that has been created by using the throw keyword. We can also use the throws keyword to warn the calling method that there might be possibility of the exception that can be thrown in the newly created method. And the exception that can be thrown can be either any exception or the one that has been user defined freshly. There can be a possibility of chained exceptions as well, as we have seen in the previous cases as well. So where there can be multiple possibilities of the chained exception. So there are various differences between C++ and Java. We'll discuss that specifically.